Ujjal Dosanjh is a former Canadian MP and he was the first Indian origin minister of Canada. He's joining me live from Vancouver. Really appreciate your time, Mr. Dosanjh. If you listen to those stories that you must have heard just a few minutes back, this is really the dark side of the great Canadian dream with which Indian students go there. The tuition fee is skyrocketing, but when it comes to basic amenities, classrooms and accommodations, all this is extremely abysmal.
Well, I think what's happening in Canada is that we have several 100,000 students coming in every year. Unfortunately, over time, governments have not kept up the funding for the universities. So for universities and colleges, foreign students have become a source of income. And the housing hasn't kept up with it. And so the amenities haven't kept up with the number of students that are coming. It's simply just a question of pure bad economic management on our part. It's not intended to be that way, but that's how it's turned out to be.
And Mr. Dosanjh, the Conservatives have been going hammer and tongs against the Prime Minister over the housing crisis, high rentals and food inflation. Do you think then by raising the alarm on Niger, is this more of a calculated risk that Justin Trudeau may have taken, more of a diversionary tactic?
Well, I don't know whether the Prime Minister of Canada would ever stoop to using something like the Niger incident as a diversion tactic. If that's the case, that's rather sad. But I don't believe that it is. I think what happened was that Globe and Mail were about to release a story, essentially the story that the Prime Minister admitted in the House. And the Prime Minister, I believe, sought to get out front of the story, and that's how it happened. Whether it is wise for the Prime Minister to have done that is another question, of course.
And in your long experience as someone who has worked and served in Canada, would you say that Indo-Canadian relations are at their lowest right now?
Well, they're at their lowest, even worse than the time of the nuclear explosion when Canada kind of cooled its relationship with India. And I remember when I was the Premier of British Columbia on a state visit to India at the time of Prime Minister Vajpayee, the High Commissioner who went to see Mr. Vajpayee with me and told me that that was the first time in years that the High Commissioner of Canada had seen any official in the central government of India. So that was bad, but I understand that our relations are at least better than that moment, but they're sort of in somewhat of a deep freeze. There is no mutual trust between the two governments. I think that, to be honest, here's the issue. I mean, Mr. Trudeau is seen to be friendly towards the secessionists, Khalistanis, over the years. And Mr. Modi is now seen as less than a Democrat. India is a democracy, but that's how some of the world sees Mr. Modi. So you have a situation where the governments have less trust between them than perhaps before.
It's been a week since Justin Trudeau's statement in Parliament. Where does Indo-Canada relations go from here on?
Well, I think that, between countries, you need interlocutors that are respected by both sides. And of course, after Mr. Trudeau's statement, I think he's impaired his ability to be the interlocutor on behalf of Canada. So Canada has to find someone else that is acceptable to both India and Canada so that we can sort of sit around the table and resolve this issue. Now, if India has done what it's alleged to have done, obviously it's a problem, and it's wrong in international law. I mean, not that other countries haven't done that kind of thing before, but the issue is Canada can't ignore that. Therefore, it is going to be a touchy subject, and it's going to take some time.
Mr. Dosanjh, last question to you. Given the number of students, Indian students who are in Canada, they are concerned, their parents are worried, in what should they... So my question is, what should they be doing? What will you be telling them?
I think that you just have to wait for the relationship to improve in terms of conditions of these students. I think, Canadian governments and universities and colleges that invite students, I think they have a moral obligation, at least, to ensure that when the students do come and they're able to access affordable housing, reasonably, sanitary conditions, and are able to carry on with their studies. But mind you, when students come, they also come at their own responsibility, at their own risk. Students can't be promised by Canada that from the moment they land or they board the plane, that Canada is going to give them housing and give them everything. Colleges make one promise generally, that there'd be a school or a college available to them and there'd be tuition. Beyond that, I think when people come to this country, they're usually on their own. The problem today is that affordable housing is in high demand and in short supply. And so students have become somewhat of a meat in the sandwich.
Yes, clearly the students have been caught in this big face-off that is continuing the standoff between India and Canada. Ujjal Dosanjh, former Canadian MP and Minister, thank you so much for your time. That's all from me. I'll be seeing you tomorrow with another episode of The Last Word.